When Evelyn moved to a cozy house on the outskirts of Austin after retiring, she envisioned peaceful days, reading a book on the porch, planting flowers, and having heart-to-heart conversations with her grown children. Family had always been her support and inspiration. Over the years, she poured her heart into raising 3 children, surrounding them with care and warmth. She hoped that now, with her children grown, they would have more time for connection and closeness. But everything turned out differently. The children lived in different cities, absorbed in their careers and personal concerns, and the rare phone calls gradually turned into short text messages. Evelyn tried to maintain contact, writing, calling, sending postcards. But more and more, she found herself speaking to voicemail or waiting weeks for a response. She tried not to be upset, but inside, there was a growing sense of being pushed out of the life in which she had once been at the center. One evening, she shared this with her neighbor, Linda, a wise and kind woman with experience as a psychologist. Linda listened attentively and then gently asked, "Have you ever thought that your children might interpret your words differently than you intend?" This question struck Evelyn deeply. She had always spoken with love. Or at least, she thought she had. Linda explained that as we age, we sometimes lose sensitivity to how others perceive us. Even a kind remark can come across as a reproach, and the desire to help can be interpreted as control. A simple phrase like, "You haven't called again," can sound like an accusation. "It's like a draft in a house that seems fine, but it makes you feel cold," she said. Evelyn felt confused. How could this be? She had always acted out of the best intentions. That night, she spent a long time thinking about how she might have unknowingly hurt her children. The next day, she asked Linda for help in understanding which words to avoid and how to change her communication style to preserve closeness. Thus began her quiet but important reevaluation, a journey toward new sincerity and mature acceptance, where the key was not just to love, but to express love in a way that was understood. The day after her conversation with Linda, Evelyn sat by the window with a cup of tea, noticing how the soft morning light fell on the windowsill. She had once seen solitude as emptiness, but now it seemed like an opportunity to listen to herself, without rushing, without unnecessary noise. Linda had advised her to start the day with a simple but powerful practice. Not to grab her phone immediately after waking up, but to spend at least 10 minutes on herself, to feel her body, breath, and emotions. Evelyn took the advice to heart. She played soft music, lit a lavender-scented candle, and allowed herself to just be. She sat with her eyes closed, trying to observe her thoughts without judging them. It was an unfamiliar experience. Usually, her day began with a mental to-do list or anxious thoughts about her children. But now, there was space in the silence. Gradually, a sense of lightness began to emerge in her body, as if the tension in her shoulders and neck was melting away. Afterward, she took a notebook and pen, as Linda had recommended, and wrote, "What am I feeling right now?" The answer was unexpected. "I feel sadness, but it's calm. I want to be heard, but without reproach. I am ready to change." These words brought her to tears, not because they were dramatic. On the contrary, because they were real. Evelyn decided that before writing to her daughter or son again, she would try to express herself differently. Without expectations, without hidden meanings. Just to say she loved them, that she thought about them. Instead of saying, "You haven't called in a while," she would say, "I remembered when we used to walk along the waterfront together. It's one of my favorite memories." She felt the difference. It was gentle, warm, and truly heartfelt. She also started paying more attention to her body. She had once thought that exercise was for sports fanatics, but now she saw it as a way to wake up, to activate her muscles, to fill herself with energy. Simple stretching exercises, a light walk around the block, breathing practices, all of this became part of her morning routine. There was something comforting in it. When you take care of your body, it's like telling yourself, I matter. Thus, the morning, once filled with anxiety and disappointment, became her small island of peace and strength. It didn't solve all her problems, but it brought Evelyn back to herself. And it was from this return that everything else began. Step by step, with kindness and respect for herself. Over time, the morning practices became something more for Evelyn than just a ritual. They reminded her that life wasn't over, that every day was a chance to return to herself. One day, after an especially peaceful morning, she looked at her reflection in the mirror and, for the first time in a long while, didn't look away. Her wrinkles no longer seemed like signs of loss. On the contrary, they became a map of what she had lived through: love, loss, expectations, and care. In that reflection, she saw not just an elderly woman, but a person with a history, depth, and light. This new inner mindset also affected how she interacted with her loved ones. Evelyn realized that strength wasn't in demands, but in openness. And though it was scary, she called her son and said not what she should say, but what she felt. I just wanted to hear your voice. I'm doing fine. I was just remembering how you used to sing in the mornings when you were a child, and it made me feel warm inside. In response, she heard surprise and a slight smile in his voice. The conversation was short, but it was real. With her daughter, who had drifted away, Evelyn decided to start differently. She wrote a letter, without reproach, without expectations. She remembered a time when they baked a pie together and wrote about how that memory had warmed her one evening. And, to her surprise, a few days later, she received a reply. Short, but sincere. It wasn't a victory, but it was a first step, and it was enough for hope to settle in her heart. But perhaps the most important change was how Evelyn began to treat herself. She no longer waited for external validation. Every day, even if it started with sadness, was an opportunity for her to tell herself, you are worthy of love, even now, especially now. This thought became her inner anchor, the one she returned to whenever she felt lonely. And she began going to the park in the mornings, not to walk, but just to be among people. At first, she sat on a bench with a book, observing passers-by. Then, conversations started with other women. Women just like her, thoughtful, a little tired, but still willing to be part of the world again. In those brief exchanges, in the smiles and shared stories, Evelyn felt it. She wasn't alone. She was part of something bigger, and that gave her the strength to keep moving forward. Time passed, and Evelyn realized that her morning rituals and small changes in how she communicated with her loved ones had begun to change not only her life, but the atmosphere in her home. She felt her relationships with her children becoming softer, warmer. Despite her age and various difficulties, she had rediscovered the world of communication and mutual understanding. Every morning, she spent not just in solitude, but in search of balance. Evelyn began to understand more and more that her loved ones didn't have to always be around for her to feel needed. Her happiness no longer depended on constant visits or calls, but on her inner state. After all, with each passing day, she was becoming not just an aging woman, but a person who deserved love and care. She began tackling new tasks, teaching herself to be more patient, and not demand too much from others. When her son and daughter visited, she no longer placed them in a position where they had to do something or justify themselves. She had learned to appreciate every moment of their presence rather than measuring it quantitatively. So, when they had dinner together, Evelyn no longer spoke about her loneliness or how often they didn't visit. Instead, she talked about how happy she was to see them, how much she cherished every moment they spent together. One day, while sitting on the porch, Evelyn reflected on how much her life had changed over the past few months. All this time, she had been searching for harmony and had learned to find it within herself. And now, she understood that the world wouldn't change in a day, but you could take steps toward happiness every day. She had gotten used to her new habits, and they no longer felt like obligations. They had become an essential source of inner peace for her. The next day, she faced it with a quiet confidence, knowing everything would be all right. She had come to the conclusion: true harmony wasn't about changing everything around you, but about learning to enjoy what you already have. And if the morning moments of meditation, a cup of tea, and a warm smile were the things that filled her day with meaning, then that was victory. She had learned to love herself at every age, and was now ready to pass that feeling on to her children and everyone around her. The world wouldn't always be perfect, but with each step forward, Evelyn understood what mattered was living in the present and cherishing every moment life brought her way.